All right, let's dive into this. We're tackling Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck today. I get why this book's resonating with you. It really flips the script on how we think about happiness.
It does. It cuts through all that self-help noise, gets to the core of, well, what makes a life good?
Yeah, and it starts right off the bat with this poet, Charles Bukowski. Super successful, but he called himself a loser. Even had "Don't Try" on his tombstone. Kind of ironic, right? For a guy who, made it.
Right. It's like, what's going on there? But that's the hook, right? Bukowski didn't pretend he was who he was, flaws and all, and that honesty, that's what people connected with.
So it's not about, striving to be this perfect version of ourselves. It's more about, I don't know, owning who we are already.
Yeah, and that's what Manson's getting at with the whole not giving effect thing. We're told we got to care about everything, our jobs, how we look, what people think. It's exhausting. Manson's saying, pick your battles. Choose what not to care about. That's where freedom is.
Okay, that's interesting. It's like we're so busy trying to live up to all these expectations, we forget to figure out what actually matters to you.
Absolutely. We're on this treadmill, but going nowhere fast.
And then he hits us with the feedback loop from hell. That name alone, I was like, okay, I'm listening.
Catchy, right. And it's so relatable, that cycle of negativity feeding on itself.
Yeah.
Like you get anxious about something and then you're anxious about being anxious. It's like, when does it end?
Oh, I know that loop well. My anxiety's best friend is more anxiety. Seriously, though, how do we break out of that?
Manson says, radical acceptance. Just acknowledge it. Hey, I'm feeling anxious. It sucks. But it's okay. It's just a feeling. Don't fight it.
Isn't that like the opposite of what we usually do? We try to push those bad feelings away.
We do, but Manson says fighting just makes it worse.
Yeah.
Like quicksand. You struggle more. You sink faster.
Wow. Yeah, I get that. So acceptance, it's like taking away its power.
Exactly. Then you can actually deal with it, in a healthy way.
So instead of freaking out, we pause, and then what? We decide how to deal.
Exactly. And that takes us to another big idea. Happiness isn't a finish line. It's a journey, an ongoing process.
Okay, I've heard that before. But Manson, he gets pretty creative explaining it. He brings in the disappointment panda.
Oh, yeah, the disappointment panda. The superhero of tough love. Telling us the hard truths about happiness. Like, you don't get happy by avoiding problems. You get happy by solving them.
Like, I don't know, when you stub your toe. Hurts like crazy, but you learn to watch where you're going, right?
Yeah. Physical pain, it's feedback. It's like, hey, there's a limit here. And emotional pain's the same. Something's off. Do something about it.
So pain, it's not the enemy. It's like a signal telling us to grow or something.
Exactly. And Manson puts it this way. Don't hope for a life without problems. Hope for a life full of good problems.
Good problems. Wait, what does that even mean?
Think about it. Good problems challenge us. They make us better. They're the struggles that lead to, I don't know, real satisfaction.
Okay, I think I see where he's going with this. But how do we know which problems are the good ones?
That's where values come in, what we find important.
So like honesty, kindness, those kinds of things.
Exactly. Manson says you got to be clear about your values because they decide what you give a fuck about, right?
Yeah.
And that shapes your whole experience of, success or happiness.
Makes sense. But how do you figure out what those values are? It seems kind of, I don't know, vague.
It can be tricky. Manson says, think about what you'd struggle for. What are you willing to fight for, even when it's hard?
Okay. And he talks about metrics too, right?
Right. Metrics, they're how we measure our progress. Manson gives this example about his relationship with his brother.
Oh, yeah, right. He wasn't talking to his brother enough or something.
Well, not exactly. He valued closeness, but he was measuring it by, how often they talked on the phone.
Ah, so the quantity of their interactions, not the quality.
Yeah. And it was making him feel bad, like he was failing.
Ouch, yeah. Been there. Focusing on the wrong thing totally messes you up. But how do we pick the right metrics then?
It goes back to those values. What do you truly value in relationships? Honesty, shared experiences. Once you nail that down, you can pick metrics that actually reflect those values.
Okay, that clicks. So it's not just about knowing your values. It's about, using the right yardstick to see if you're living up to them.
Exactly. And Manson uses these two musicians, right, to make this point. Dave Mustaine from Megadeth and Pete Best, the original drummer for the Beatles.
Wait, the guy they kicked out right before they got Hugh G.E., what's his story got to do with this?
Well, Mustaine, even though he's super successful, he's always comparing himself to Metallica, how much bigger they got. And it makes him miserable.
Yeah. So, even though he made it, he's unhappy because he's using the wrong yardstick.
Yeah, he's measuring success by external stuff, what the world says, That makes you a slave to comparison, always feeling less than.
Wow, yeah. So even if you achieve a lot, if you're chasing the wrong thing, you're going to be unhappy.
Now, Pete Best, getting kicked out of the Beatles, that had to hurt. But he didn't let it define him. He focused on family, found contentment that, honestly, the Beatles themselves never really had.
So different values, different metrics, and in the end, a different kind of success.
Right. He chose inner peace
Yeah.
over, like, fame and all that, and that led to a more fulfilling life.
That's a great example. It shows that real happiness, it's not about fitting into some mold of success. It's about living by what matters to you.
Exactly. And that brings us to a big problem Manson talks about, entitlement.
Entitlement.
Yeah, that feeling of deserving something without, putting in the work like you're owed it.
Oh, yeah, I get it. Like Jimmy in the book, that startup guy, thinks he's going to be a millionaire just because he has a brilliant idea.
That's the one. Jimmy, he confuses feeling good about himself with, like, actual self-worth.
Wait, hold on. What's the difference there?
Feeling good, that's often surface level. Likes on social media, people telling you you're great.
Yeah.
Self-worth, that's deeper. Knowing your value even when things are tough.
So it's like having a strong sense of yourself, not needing other people to tell you you're worthy.
Exactly. And being able to admit your flaws, work on them, not just pretend they're not there.
Makes sense. And social media, it's like the breeding ground for entitlement, right? Everyone's putting on this perfect show.
It's all about exceptionalism, right? Making the rest of us feel like we're not enough. And then we're chasing likes, desperate for that validation.
We're constantly proving ourselves instead of just like accepting ourselves.
Which brings us back to Manson's point, right?
Yeah.
Choosing what to give a fuck about. You can't control everything that happens, but you can control what you focus on, what matters to you.
That's pretty powerful. So instead of feeling overwhelmed by everything we're supposed to care about, we get to choose.
You got it. Which takes us to a really cool part of the book, the power of choosing your struggles.
Oh, yeah, the story where he gets like falsely accused of having drugs in middle school.
That one really stuck with me. It shows how deep unresolved stuff can go, Manson buried those feelings, and it affected him for years.
Yeah, it's like the struggles we choose are the ones that get thrown at us. They really shape us.
And then there's that crazy story of Hiro Onoda, the Japanese soldier who fought World War II for 29 years after it ended.
Wait, what? 29 years? How's that even possible?
He was on this tiny island, never got the memo that the war was over, thought he was still fighting for his country, living in the jungle, evading capture for like 3 decades.
That's insane. But how does that connect to choosing our struggles?
He chose a struggle that to everyone else seemed pointless. But to him, it gave his life meaning. He was willing to fight for it, even when the whole world had moved on.
So even though it was based on, like, a misunderstanding, it still gave him purpose.
Exactly. And that's what Manson's saying, right?
Yeah.
It's not about if the struggle is right or wrong, objectively. It's about the meaning we give it.
Okay, wow. So not about finding the right struggle, but the one that resonates with you gives your life meaning.
You got it. Which leads to another key point, taking responsibility versus playing the blame game.
So we're talking about choosing our struggles, but what about when those struggles involve other people? Like when someone hurts you, you kind of want to blame them, right?
Totally. It's like the first thing you feel.
Mm-hmm.
But Manson's saying blame keeps you stuck. You got to take responsibility for your own well-being, even when it sucks.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? Especially when, like, someone screws you over.
He talks about a bad breakup he went through. At first, it was all, she's the problem. But looking back, he saw how he contributed to the mess,
Breakups. Yeah, it's easy to get caught in that blame cycle. But what does taking responsibility even mean in that situation?
It's not about saying, oh, it was all my fault. It's more like recognizing that even if someone's actions hurt you, you still get to decide how you react, how you heal.
So you're in charge of your own feelings, even when someone else caused them?
Yeah. You can't control what other people do, but you can control how you respond.
Yeah.
How you move forward.
Okay, I think I'm following. But what about when the pain is just like, oh, huge E? Manson mentions this grieving father who thinks his pain is the only real pain. How do you even start taking responsibility when you're, I don't know, drowning in grief?
That's a really good point. It's about having compassion, right? The father's pain is real to him. You can't dismiss that.
So it's like being understanding, even if someone's stuck in blame?
Yes. But also remembering, everyone's got their own stuff going on. You can offer support, but you can't fix it for them. They got to find their own way through.
It's a tough balance, isn't it? Being there for someone, but also like letting them own their own healing.
It is. And that leads to another big idea Manson dives into, questioning your beliefs.
This is the part that kind of blew my mind. He talks about that experiment where people think they're controlling a light, but it's totally random.
Just crazy, right? Shows how our brains are, like, wired to find patterns. We want to believe we're in control, that our actions make things happen, but sometimes it's just, like, pure chance.
So you're saying our brains are making stuff up to explain the world?
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, our beliefs, even the ones we really believe in, they're not always based on, like, facts. They come from our experiences, our biases, all that.
Okay, that's kind of unsettling. So how do we know what to believe? Like, how do you sort out truth from, I don't know, BS?
Manson doesn't give you a simple answer, but he says you gotta have a healthy dose of self-skepticism.
Self-skepticism, you mean like doubting yourself?
Kinda, yeah. It's about realizing our brains can be wrong. We can have blind spots. Being open to the possibility that, hey, maybe I don't have it all figured out.
Man, that's tough. I like to think I'm pretty logical, but I guess everyone has those blind spots, right?
Totally. And he uses that example of Meredith, the woman who had that false memory of abuse.
Oh, right. That one was so sad. She was completely convinced it happened, but it wasn't real. How does something like that even happen?
It's complicated, right? Her own past experiences, what people were saying about child abuse back then, even therapy played a role. It's a reminder that memories, they can be really fragile.
So you're saying you can't even trust your own memories. That's scary.
It's not about distrusting everything, more like realizing that memories are like recreations, not perfect recordings. They get mixed up with our feelings, our beliefs.
So how do we deal with that? If our own minds can play tricks on us, how do you know what's actually true?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
And Manson's answer is keep questioning. Be skeptical even of yourself. Don't take things at face value. And be willing to change your mind, if there's evidence that you were wrong.
Don't trust yourself too much. Wow, that's a lot to take in. But I guess if our brains can mess up that badly, a little self-doubt isn't such a bad thing.
Exactly. And that leads to a kind of surprising benefit of uncertainty. It allows for growth, for change.
Wait, uncertainty is good? I thought we were supposed to be trying to be certain, to have everything figured out.
That's what we're told, right? But Manson says certainty can be a trap.
How so?
When you're totally sure about something, you stop being open to new ideas, new information. You get stuck in your ways.
Ah, so being certain can actually hold you back. That's kind of the opposite of what I thought.
Think of it this way. If you think you know everything, you can't learn anything new. You're limited by your own perspective.
Makes sense. But how do you embrace uncertainty when it feels, I don't know, uncomfortable? We're kind of programmed to want certainty, right?
He gives this example of Erin, this woman who's all about self-improvement, doing all the right things. But when Manson tries to break up with her, she threatens suicide.
Wow, that's intense what was going on there.
She was so attached to her beliefs, so certain about her path, that rejection just shattered her whole world. She needed control so badly, she'd rather die than face the unknown.
That's an extreme case. But I get it, that fear of the unknown, of not having answers, it's a real thing.
And that's why Manson says, be open to uncertainty. Be okay with not knowing everything. That's where the real growth happens, when you step outside your comfort zone.
Okay, yeah. If you're always holding on to what you think you know, you might miss out on something better.
Exactly. And this takes us to a part of life where uncertainty is like unavoidable relationships.
Oh, yeah, relationships. Talk about a roller coaster.
And that's where Manson's ideas about rejection and boundaries are super helpful. He says, rejection, as much as it sucks, it's actually essential for good relationships.
Hold on, rejection is a good thing?
He looks at Romeo and Juliet.
Right.
Not as the ultimate love story, but like a cautionary tale. Like they were codependent, no boundaries, and it ended tragically.
Okay, that's a different way to see it. But
Yeah.
I get what he's saying. They were impulsive, dramatic, not exactly a recipe for a healthy relationship.
Right. Manson says there's healthy love, and then there's unhealthy love.
What's the difference?
Unhealthy love is about using your partner to escape your own problems. Looking for validation, like to complete you. Healthy love. It's about facing your problems together.
So it's about being real, not using each other as, like, crutches.
Yes. And that takes boundaries. Manson says boundaries are the line between your stuff and their stuff, responsibility-wise.
Boundaries, so like setting limits on what you'll put up with.
Yeah, knowing what you're responsible for and what's on them. And being brave enough to say no when someone crosses the line.
I get that boundaries are important, but I'm still stuck on the rejection part. Why is that good?
Because it's honest, right? It's saying, this doesn't work for me. It lets you define what you value, builds trust.
So rejection is basically honesty in action.
Exactly. It's saying what you need, even if it's hard, even if it risks, like, disappointing someone.
It's like by saying no to the wrong things, you make space for the right things.
Yes. Which brings us to another key concept, commitment.
It really makes you think, you know? We chase all these things, success, money, whatever, but maybe real success is just like being okay with who you are already.
That's the cool thing about Manson's message.
Yeah.
He's not saying be perfect, be this, be that. He's saying be real. Life's messy, and that's okay.
It's like he's giving us permission to just, I don't know, let go of all that pressure.
Yeah. You get to decide what matters, your values, your version of success. It's all up to you.
It's not about being lazy or not caring about anything. It's about like being more thoughtful, choosing where you put your energy.
Exactly. You can't fight every battle. You got to pick what you give a feck about.
And accept that some things, well, you just can't control them.
Right. Like death. Manson talks about death a lot, actually. Uses it to, like, frame how we think about life.
Yeah, that's one of the things that surprised me. This
Sure.
book goes deep, existential stuff, but it doesn't feel heavy. It's kind of hopeful, actually.
He's like, hey, we're all going to die anyway, so why stress about the small stuff? Focus on what makes you happy, what gives your life meaning.
And that brings us back to that quote, "Death is the light by which the shadow of all of life's meaning is measured." It's like knowing our time is limited, it makes everything more important somehow.
It does. It's like, okay, time to stop messing around, focus on what matters, don't waste time on things that don't.
But it's not about, like, being afraid of dying, right?
No, it's about using that knowledge that we're not here forever to live a better life, a more honest life. Cut through the BS and get to the real stuff.
Yeah. It's about accepting that we're mortal, but not letting that paralyze us. It's what gives life meaning, in a way.
Right. And that's really the heart of the subtle art of not giving a feck. Choosing what matters, letting go of what doesn't, and just being true to yourself.
It's been, I don't know, this has been really eye-opening, made me question some things, think about things differently.
I'm glad. It's one of those
Naturally.
books that sticks with you, you know.
Definitely. So if you had to pick one thing for our listeners to take away, what would it be? The big takeaway from this whole deep dive.
That line, you are great already. It's so simple, but so powerful. You don't need anyone's permission to be awesome. You just are. And once you believe that, you can do anything.
That's a great way to put it. And on that note, we'll leave you with this. What do you give a feck about? What are you willing to fight for? What do you want to leave behind? Choose wisely, because like Manson says, we only get so many fecks to give.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep getting a feck about the things that matter to you.
And we'll catch you next time.